Hey everybody, this is our second video in this little series on Carl Rogers and humanistic psychology. In the first video, I talked briefly about Rogers' idea of the self, and particularly about how the ideal self can cause a poor self-image if it's not achievable. So, for example, one could say that the ideal self is full of shoulds. You should be thin, you should be smart, you should be athletic, whatever those shoulds are. And the farther away we are from those ideals, the worse we feel about ourselves. Today we're going to talk a little bit about how Rogers says we get to that place. How do we get to this place where we think that we're not good enough, or we think that we should be something different? And as we said in the previous video, we get it from the culture, but the culture doesn't have to be the broader culture at large. It could be our parents, it could be whatever it is that we're living in. I'm going to click through some. Here we go. And Rogers says that the way that we get to this situation where our ideal self and our true self are so far apart, causing poor self-esteem, is through conditions of worth. And you can see here I have a little list of what conditions of worth might sound like if we put them in words. So I am lovable when when I'm smart, when I'm pretty, when I'm nice to you, when I do what you want, whatever. I am lovable if I will be abandoned if you only love me because. So, you can pause the video here and stop and think for a minute about what your conditions of worth are. We all have them. For some of us, it's worse than for others, right? And, Rogers asks, how does that happen? And the way that it happens is that as we grow up in every family, even the best parents have expectations. And those expectations usually have to do with what they want rather than what the child necessarily needs or wants. Sometimes you'll see, for example, divorced families where the parents are divorced or fighting a lot, and the children wind up being go-betweens. Tell your mother, tell your father. They listen to one parent's complaints about the other. They're mediators. And part of the conditions of worth that they grow up with is you are lovable when you are a mediator, when you are able to soothe me, the parent, when I'm having a hard time about your other parent, when we're fighting, whatever it is. So conditions of worth can be almost anything. You're lovable. Sometimes for guys, it's if you're tough, if you're smart, right? So, what should a parent do, or what should? Now Rogers talks to therapists too, right? He's the founder of this type of client-centered therapy that you read about in your book. And how do we treat this? How do we make this better? So for parents, Rogers suggests, we don't start that way, period. We try to not have conditions of worth, to the best of our ability. For therapists, what Rogers says is we need three conditions. Three conditions to try to move somebody away from this poor self-esteem, to try to raise self-esteem. And we're going to look at that here. And this is unconditional positive regard. And what unconditional positive regard says is, I love you no matter what you do. I won't always like what you do, but I prize you as a person. There is nothing you could do that would destroy my love. So Rogers really liked the word prize because I think he thought that it would be odd or uncomfortable for a therapist to say that they love their client, although he did use the word love too about his clients. So that's not to say that the parent walks in on the child, swinging the kitty around by its tail and says, oh honey, what a great idea, I love you for it. It's not like that, right? The parent would, get the kitty, protect the kitty. And, you might say to the kid something like, we don't do that. That hurts the cat. The cat doesn't like that. So, don't do that. What we would not say is, what a terrible, unkind person you are. That's about the person. That's about how I value you and how I think about you. That is what Rogers said was so damaging. So, I love you no matter what you do. And I don't judge you. Basically, it's about not judging, which can be very hard. So unconditional positive regard is the first condition that the therapist has to have in order to heal their client's poor self-esteem. There are 3 conditions. One of them is unconditional positive regard. The other 2 are empathy and congruence. What empathy says is, what empathy is I can put myself in your shoes and understand your circumstances. Now, I use my own history, right, to understand what you're going through. Maybe I've never been through it. Maybe you lost a sibling. Maybe your sibling died. That's never happened to me. But I can think of how much I love my sibling, what it might feel like if I lost my sibling. I can think about other people that I have lost and loved. And I use all of that information to try to imagine your situation. And Rogers said that therapy should be accurate. Empathy should be accurate. So I don't sit there and say, well, I didn't like my brother very much, so yeah, it's no big deal that I lost him, so it's probably no big deal for you. We don't just project our own experience onto another person. We really think about them. So, wow, I know how close you were to your brother. I know how, the 2 of you fought sometimes, but you would make, whatever it is, to really put yourself in their shoes. Number 2 here is congruence. For the sake of our purposes here, congruence, and you'll remember that from the first video, is when our own esteem is good, right? It's also about being honest with ourselves. Being honest with ourselves and others, being true to ourselves. And that really is expressed in honesty. So what Rogers is saying is that in order to be a good parent or a good therapist, we need to have empathy, we need to be honest, and we need to not judge, whether it's clients or children. So I am going to stop this video here. I see we're at 8 minutes, and I'm trying to keep them to around 6 to 8 minutes. So thank you. And there will be another brief video on Rogers.